Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now it's been a while since I've done an unboxing video, so today's going to be fun, a little bit of a change of pace for me. What I have here is two dark timber knives. Now in the past there have been a number of drops that I've been fortunate enough to get my hands on a dark timber knife. If you go back and take a look at some of my videos, you will see I covered the 1911 Elite, the OG Grizzly, the 1911 Commander, and the Tavi. But today here, I have two of the Bushy. Now, if you're familiar with dark timber knives, you probably realize that their drops go very, very fast. Every time they create a batch of knives and have a knife drop, they sell out almost instantaneously. Quite frankly, I had hoped to get my hands on one of the new Cave Bear models, but I happened to land two of the Bushies. So hard enough to get one, but I did get two, and we're going to take a look at these in detail today. Now, if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. Okay, so as I mentioned here, today we are going to get into an unboxing of this Bushy. So again, the dark timber Bushy. Very cool. I am excited to get my hands on these and to show you what I've been able to pick up. And so the first one here, as we get into this, making sure I am careful. And here we go. So here, my receipt. You will see I picked these up at Knives Ship Free, so very cool. Actually, pretty awesome logo there. Looks like a Bark River, if I had to guess. Bravo 1 maybe. And here, very typical, the dark timber box. We've seen this before. And so this particular model here, this Bushy having a green micarta and black ash burl handle, orange liners, and this is the Nitro V satin finished blade. So if I had to guess, opening this up, yep, packaged up like it always is. And this particular model here, you'll see coming with a sort of different Kydex. We'll talk about that in a little bit. They always do a nice job with their packaging, protecting the handles, protecting the sheath, and you'll see everything just wrapped up. And this part here, these little wings, or what I'm saying, are a little different from their typical design. They've put out a couple models this time with these sort of attachment wings here to give you a couple different mounting options, but a little bit interesting. Something I haven't quite seen before. And so now, removing, oh, wow. Wow. This is sick. Wow. That is really, really nice. That caught me by surprise. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but when you buy these, you don't get a chance to really absorb them and remember exactly what you bought. You pretty much just need to jump on whichever knife you can get your hands on real quick. And so you don't get to really take them in at the time. And this is my opportunity now to look at this in detail. That is just beautiful. Very nicely done. That black ash, interesting burl, very, very cool. Now you'll see here the blade coming nicely oiled. This is Nitro V, so you shouldn't have too much problem with corrosion, but again, just treating it very carefully. And a beautiful blade shape. This blade shape is magnificent. And I can tell you by holding this, this knife is actually bigger than I thought it would be. This is actually a little bit thicker in the hand. The blade length is a little bit longer than I initially just sort of envisioned. So this is going to be a nice size, just perfect all-around field knife and a good belt knife. And I'm starting to get some quick impressions on this. You can see the jimping they chose to use on top. I like that. It is very similar to what you saw on the Tavi. Very, very cool. And like all dark timbers, everything just super nicely contoured and filling out your hand wonderfully. Ergonomics is always, always a premium when you get a dark timber knife. That's absolutely the case here with the Bushy. But now as I continue through this process, we'll get the next knife out here first before we go into any further details. And again, here you can see the dark timber box, only this time we have black micarta with olive green rustic maple handle scales, orange liner, and again the Nitro V satin finished blade. So this one here obviously is going to be a bit different. Now the things that do stay the same, the sheath is absolutely identical, so no surprises there. But as we get into the knife handle, well, this is the moment of joy. Wow. Wow. This is going to be a hard choice. If you had to pick one of the two of these, which one do you pick? Man, this is outstanding. Look at this. It is like a cool, almost like camouflagey looking green with that black, the orange liner, that tumbled look through the tang. This knife is absolutely gorgeous. Both of these are just magnificent. What a beautiful pair of knives. And this, I can tell you, is going to be a difficult choice on which one of these. If I were to keep one of them, which one would I keep? Man, that is not easy. And so now at this point, let's take a look at these in greater detail, get some of the specifications, and we'll take a look at the overall size and compare it to maybe some blades you may be a little more familiar with. And so you can see the blade on the Bushy is roughly 3 3/4 inches of overall cutting edge, which pretty much is the entire blade length. And then on the handle, you go to roughly about 5 more inches. So this knife is right at that 9-inch mark overall. Just a good size field knife. And so now just comparing the Bushy to a couple of other knives that you may be a little more familiar with. So on the bottom here, you will see the SE4. In the middle here, this is the Tex Creek by Tops. Now, this particular Tops Tex Creek is the 20th anniversary edition. It is, in essence, exactly the same size as the standard Tex Creek. However, what you can see is really compared to the Bushy, this particular Tex Creek is probably the closest I have to a similar knife. Now, it definitely fits in that belt knife size class, is a good quality companion blade maybe to an axe or a larger chopper or a saw. So I would say you definitely would be in great shape having a blade of this size on your hip. This Bushy will definitely be doing a lot of work for me. Now again, both of these Bushies in Nitro V, so nice quality stainless option. It should be very corrosion resistant, yet still have wonderful edge retention and the ability to do some good hard use with this. If there is one thing you get with a dark timber knife, it's definitely the quality in the steel and the ability to do some good hard field use. So dark timber definitely, I would say, coming from the standpoint of if you're going to have this knife on your belt, you definitely need to trust it and to do some good, I would say, woodscraft and firecraft tasks. And this Bushy is going to be wonderful for that. And I would say this is definitely like a slightly larger bushcraft knife. I mean, this is, I think, for most people, going to do a wonderful job carving. I love this handle. This is excellent. Good and comfortable, melts into my hands. Good for multiple position grips without any difficulty, no hot spots, and just is wonderfully contoured. So very cool. So between the blade shape, which is just a bit of a drop point there, a nice flat grind to a high saber, that nice jimping, and no swedge, which is not always the case. It just maybe ever so slightly, and I'm not going to say chamfered, but just kind of nicely kissed over the top there and flattened out. That's just nicely done, and you can see that you do end up with a bit of that texturing. So it is a tumbled finish here on the top, all the way across the top of the spine. Then you end up with the satin on the flats. Very, very cool. So nicely done and great attention to detail. And getting in a little tighter here, you'll see that is the Dark Timber logo on this side, another logo on this side, and then also stamped USA. So this does not necessarily indicate the steel on the blade, and that's just fine. We know this is Nitro V, and I'm interested to test this out. I don't get my hands on Nitro V all too often, so it'll be great to give this some good hard field time. Now, something that did catch me by surprise, the stock is fairly thin. So at a 3 millimeter thick, that's roughly 1/8 of an inch. Very interesting. and very thin. So that means this knife is going to be quite slicey. And again, on top of the spine, a little bit squared off, which is good. So that's going to allow you to do some of those scraping tasks. This knife's going to be a wonderful bushcraft knife. Now again, this particular handle here in black ash with green micarta, and then you'll see the orange liners just nicely popping off of the tang. Beautifully done, nicely contoured, and you can see all the way around. Just nicely softened through the palm swell and your indexing areas. Just nicely done. And when you grip the knife, that is something you will feel immediately, just how nicely this indexes and how soft, and just, it's also firm, but just feels great in the hands. Very nicely done. And the slotted screw heads, these are capable of being taken apart, which is nice. So having the slotted heads, that definitely works. Now personally, I have never taken the handles off of a dark timber knife. I'm not sure exactly what kind of skeletonizing you may have underneath, but I can tell you this knife is fairly well balanced and feels great in the hands. When I go for balance here, you'll see it's balanced right around this middle palm swell area. And I'm not surprised the balance is a little further back on this particular knife. If you look at the amount of material you have here in the handles, that's going to be indicative of that. So you do have, again, just a large palm swell, a lot of wood. This is a dense wood and dense micarta, and it's going to have just a little bit of a weighty feel in that handle. So it doesn't mean it doesn't feel nimble or balanced. In fact, if anything, it means it maybe feels a little more nimble because you have more weight back in your handle versus the blade. So when you get this in your hands, it does feel particularly wieldy, and it is, I would say, very nicely contoured and a little bit fidgety. I kind of like that, the fact that you can sort of roll this knife around with ease in your hands, get your multiple positions, and work with it quite quickly. It feels great. It's nimble. Very nicely done. This Bushy is sick. And this Bushy here in the handle color olive green rustic maple with that black micarta, and again the orange liners, again just very beautiful. And looking at it here in a little more detail so you can see that finish, absolutely gorgeous. Both of these knives fitted perfectly. Craftsmanship is just wonderful, great feel in the hand, and very nice. And another close detail that I'd like to point out, if you look at the quality of the dovetailing in all the joints, you can really see it very well here on this particular model because of the color combinations, and it is so tight in tolerance. There's no gaps, there's no warping, there's no spaces, there's no voids, and in these models, even the grain is nice and clear. There's no deformation, there's no heavy knots or missing chunks of wood. So they've picked out very premium pieces of wood. They've machined them absolutely perfectly. They fit everything up to a very tight tolerance, and the overall fit and finish and craftsmanship is really second to none. And so now getting into the Kydex, Dark Timber always doing a nice job with their Kydex. This you can see is a pancake style Kydex sheath. Now just by judging it, I'd say this is probably 0.8 roughly thick Kydex. Nicely done, well formed, a little bit of extra material. So if you're somebody who likes to cut down on material, you could probably get in here, sand this down just a little bit more without any, I would say, degradation of the retention. So overall, nicely formed, you can see, nicely contoured and everything, very well done with an ample drainage hole right on the bottom. And here you'll see, as I mentioned, this has some sort of interesting leather adapters here. So you have leather, which is going to be nice and have a little bit of flex and a little bit of give and not be too stiff, with these plastic clips that look like they'll be very simple to get on and off a belt. So here you'll see there is a little lever underneath. These are very nicely done. Gives you the ability just to kind of get underneath there and click that up and get it on or off your belt, hopefully with ease, and we'll test that out here in a minute. But very interesting design. Again, I have never quite seen anything just like this. And in terms of the retention, well, too late now. Bang. Nice. Good click. Fits well. Definitely has a little bit of play in there, but nothing, I would say, detrimental to the overall retention. The knife is certainly not going to come out, and I would even trust it inverted. So carrying it inverted on a pack or something like that, I definitely would trust it. It looks good in the sheath. I like this overall. I think it looks beautiful. The black on the other model might match just a little better with this particular color sheath. It might be cool if you could get this in the OD green, kind of to match the green on the micarta there. But again, not a big deal and just a slight personal preference thing. But the main thing being, the retention is great. No problem. And as I remove the knife here, not too much in the way of scuffs on the finish, which is nice. So hopefully the sheath will protect the blade without damaging it. Sometimes you end up with, you know, streaks and marks and some damage to the blade due to the sheath and the fact that it's Kydex, but here, not too big of a deal. So overall, very nice. Now let's try to put on this sheath and see how it fits. And so here, as we get into this, you'll see I can make some decisions about where to place this. But in these particular pants, it does fit nicely between these belt loops. So here, sliding it on, that's easy. And here, sliding it on, that's easy. That's about as easy as it gets. And for me to have this on my side with a little bit of flex and give, and for a belt knife, that's going to work out quite nice. So that to me is about perfect and feels really good. I actually like that. I like that it's a wide point of contact, keeps it nice and secure, but it's going to have just a little bit of flex and give. And if I wanted to even straddle my belt loops, well, that's actually quite easy to get off. And if I wanted to, I could go maybe a little further back here. So again, sliding that into place. Now it's sort of straddling my belt loops here, and that works very well. So again, if I wanted it a little further back and out of the way, that's going to work nice. And the other thing I'm seeing, and it's subtle, but it does seem as though the knife is sitting just slightly out, which is a good thing. I think that is a nice little bonus where it's not stuffed directly against your body, and it's not very rigid. In fact, it has just a little give, which is nice, say, for example, when you're wearing a jacket, because now it really does kind of clear the fabric, and as you look there, there's no real concern about cutting your jacket. And so pulling the knife out, real easy. Putting it back in, no problem. If you want to be a little more concealed, there you go. So overall, I'd say this works very, very well. And then my ability to remove it off of my belt, well, fairly simple. Just using those tabs, no big deal. And there you go. So very nicely done, Dark Timber. This Bushy is pretty amazing. So all right guys, there you have it. A look at a couple of beautiful Bushy knives from Dark Timber Knives in Nitro V. Just really, really cool. And I am stoked to have one of these in my hands ready for good quality field use. Now you may have wondered and probably figured out that of the two of these, if I had to keep one, I think I'm going with the black ash with the green micarta and those orange liners. It just sort of called out to me, and quite frankly, both of these do. It's not an easy decision, but it's one that I have to make, and not a problem that's really a bad one to have. So overall, I am planning on getting this into a good hard field use video coming up hopefully fairly soon, but in the meantime, this is just going to sit on my belt. It's going to be my everyday carry for a while, and I am greatly going to enjoy this knife. So all right guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. Hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.